Hey Bonnie, how's it going? It's Yoni here, just leaving you some feedback on your public review. I'm not sure if your public review is newer or older than your assignment for last week, but I had a look at both of them. Looking really, really, really cool. Love the caveman. He's looking absolutely fantastic, and it's been a nice little piece you've been doing for the last couple of months, man. It's like really, really, really nice. Nice to see kind of like the culmination of it. And yeah, everything feels great. I love the jumps, especially, when he picks himself up, on the boulders with his arms. Those pieces are really, really, really sweet. I mean, the weight's really nicely solved in those parts there. It's going to be really hard to give you any type of feedback or comments, but I'll give it a shot. I'll just run through your animation, see what I can see. And, boom. Yeah. Uh-huh. It's a nice little jump there. I just think that, yeah, because it's partly a jump, it's partly a fall. Just have a look at your curve editor. Have a look at where the keyframes are on the hips when they're going down. Just make sure that that parabola is actually starting to show up there, even if it isn't stepped. Because yeah, because I think it's just fine. The only thing that kind of like throws me off a little bit is the pose in frame 21. Just because it's like it's I think it's just a line of action in the sense of the way that the body, basically the hips drop, and the line there with the feet is pretty much like split. So it's like the body is doing that to jump. And I think that it should just be, perfectly straight like that, or at least going into that shape of the curve for the jump. That's the only thing. I think it's like the hips are just a bit too far forward on frame 21. Might be up a bit, screen left a bit or something like that, but just maybe push the pose in frame 21 so that it actually is more into the line of action to an extent as well. Also looking at the hands as well when he jumps, I think you're just missing a little bit of, you got a tiny bit of overlap, but I think that between frame 15 and frame 18, sorry, let's just get those numbers right for you. Pose in frame 13 and frame 16, right? You've got a tiny anticipation there. So the arm just moves back just a little bit. And if he's jumping and it's going to be a big jump, keep in mind, a bit more of exaggerating the swing. Again, one of the things is that parkour guys, as they run so fast, they already have a lot of that momentum in them, so they don't really need to do that. But remember to anticipate the arms as well and be a bit more exaggerated than you would be. I think also for the theme that you've got, the caveman, you want to keep his movements a bit rougher than a professional athlete. So it's more like seeing an animal in the wild than seeing, somebody who's basically, very graceful like a dancer or like a martial artist. It's got to be a bit more out of control to an extent. And that's something that happens nicely in when he recovers from the jump in frame 33, that squabbling on the ground where he moves kind of like his hands trying to keep himself up. That's a great little detail. That's really cool. I just have a look at maybe not having both hands land at the same time on frame 41. So try to keep things more like if he's almost trying to walk with his hands to an extent, and try to avoid poses where both hands are exactly on the ground. And also on frame 42, I'd change this pose, especially because you've got foot, hand, and head really, really, really close in the same area. So I'd try to maybe, with that idea of maybe having him walk forward, try having like his left arm stretched forward so it passes over his head, his other hand slightly back on the ground, and the foot just planted straight on the ground. So basically, get that foot to actually stomp on the ground faster, just because that way he regains his balance a lot easier. And then he goes up, has that little look back. Really cool. Just have a look at that. No, that's great. Nice anticipation. Beautiful over the top. The one thing that I will say that's a tad bit, I wouldn't say weird, but you can really see that it's a parkour move, is especially when he jumps off from frame 122 to 135. That half spin in the air is really parkourish in the sense of, it's just such a move that unless you could either spin him much more so he looks like he's more out of control, so it's like do the flip, but essentially don't have him have any hang time whatsoever. So you'd skip the pose in 128 when he's just holding onto the ledge and then he pushes himself off. So literally the flip from the top is what makes him spin into the ground. Or if you want to just have the hang and let him drop, I'd have him drop straight because it's nothing really wrong with the animation at all. It's completely a personal comment, but I just think that having the character that's the caveman essentially move like a guy who's doing parkour. It's that idea that it should be a bit more wild, less refined. I think and it's like one of those things, doing things through exactly the minimum effort. If he's going to drop down, have him drop down. Or if that spin is something you want to keep, take out the hang time where he's just holding the position 1 second, and now I drop. Because that way it looks much more fluid. It's kind of like looking at Tarzan from Disney. All the movements that are there, that he does, some of them are inspired by a few other things, but especially kind of like the action sequences when he's fighting against the leopard and a few of the other ones. There's always this sense that he's very much on the edge and everything's kind of like a reaction, and nothing is kind of like so polished, and I think that that's something that could work in your scene. But again, that's personal comments, preferences, take it or ignore it, it's entirely up to you. It's your shot. Body mechanics wise, it's working fine. It absolutely is. And maybe that's exactly what you need to show off for your reels. So, Anyway, I won't justify myself anymore. But yeah, beautiful little jump over the top. I think again, just to muck things up a little bit more again, take the pose in frame 160, frame 161, frame 164, all that jump over there, keep the legs just a little bit separate, okay? Have those jumps not go over at the same time. So maybe instead of having him jump, in a perfect pose over the top, it can be a bit more like a hurdle jump, where he basically, one foot goes forward and then the other one goes over, and he leans more on one hand and he pushes himself off to the side. You might have to look for some different reference for that, but that might be okay. Or even, if you want to keep it this way, just offset the feet just a little bit. Twinning wise, you're almost fine, except that it's again that pose in frame 163, that's perfectly twinned. It's twinned on the arms, it's twinned on the legs. Give us some variation, make that posing, that silhouette on frame 163 much, 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 much sweeter. And that goes into 166 as well, same comment. So yeah, the jump over there, mess it up a little bit, go completely wild, or, just go subtle, just improve the silhouette and change the twinning, even if it looks like in your reference that those legs are in exactly the same position. Change it just to basically get some variation in the shape, okay? Well, fantastic, man. Really looking forward to see how that's going to come along, and best of luck, so see you around. Take care.